President of the United States keeps saying that we are the sole indispensable country in the world. Right? So when I talk at colleges, I say, well, okay, you all know about synonyms? Yeah, so that's a like word. Well, how about an antonym? You know what an antonym is? And usually one or two says, yeah, that's an opposite word. I say, yeah, good. Okay, so what's the opposite? What's the antonym for indispensable? And they, dispensable? I say, yeah, I think. So what does that mean? That means all the other countries in the world are, by definition, dispensable. Right? Now, how does it go over with the rest of the world? Not very well. And how does it go over with Americans? In an insidious way, as though it were true. And it ain't true. You know, a little pet peeve of mine. The President ends his speeches. God bless America. Now, number one, there's nothing in the Hebrew or Christian scriptures that says we can use the imperative mood for God. Okay? God uses this. God, you bless America. The rest of the people, well, they're dispensable. God bless America. So that's number one. Number two, you know, why does he have to always do that? Why do they have to always do that? God bless America. I mean, that's not only anti-biblical, it doesn't make any sense. You should be able to say, God bless us all, right? And if you want to say, and especially the country that I purview over. But so this is the kind of arrogance that people in the world are wising up to, particularly because now the U.S. has shown itself to be unable to prevail, as they did in the first Gulf War, as they did sort of in an attack on Iraq. No longer is that possible. After the Gulf War, one of our prominent retired generals, Wesley Clark, asked Paul Wolfowitz, policymaker for defense, what did you learn from the Gulf War? You know, we beat those, we got those Iraqis out of Kuwait, we beat them back and all that, but what was the real lesson? You know what he said? He said, the real lesson was, we can do these things and the Russians can't stop us. That's 1991. You know, it's 2016 now, the Russians have stopped us. Okay? And the question is whether the new regime in Washington will be able to adroitly acquiesce in the fact that we can't work our will on every country in the rest of the world. We ought to say, God bless us all.
Okay, I just want to ask people who to come, question, make it brief, please, short, okay, as much as you can.
Just recently in Lebanon, the ally of Hezbollah elected as president.
Yes.
After 3 years of the Saudis and the...
Yeah.
How do you explain that in relation to the situation in Syria? Because it is the barometer of advance. And you mentioned that corridor, importance of that corridor, and now it has the official cover of...
Yeah.
How you...
Well, you know, as the Germans would say, jetzt bin ich überfragt. It means, now I am over-asked. I don't know the answer to that. Typically what I would do is call up my friends who know a lot about that particular area in the world and feed on what they tell me. I haven't had time to do that because it just happened yesterday. So I wish I knew. Does anybody else have a good idea of how this will relate to the Syrian conflict?
Could you summarize what was said?
Yeah, the question was, with the new government in Lebanon for the first time in 3 years, and a multi-confessional sort of arrangement like they always have, how will this affect what happens in Syria? And I just don't know the answer to that. But
it's a strong ally to Bashar al-Assad and Hezbollah.
Yeah, Hezbollah is still a very potent force there. Yeah. So, it's a very important development. I just don't know exactly which way it will cut.
I think it would be less the influence that Lebanon would have on Syria than the other way around. What happens in Syria will decide what happens in Lebanon. Syria is to be ticked off before they move to Lebanon to remove Hezbollah so that the Israelis aren't open on their flank as they were before. The real target in the region has been Iran. The aim to control the energy reserves of the entire region, not to control them for the US, to deny them to their global competitor, the Chinese. In relation to Syria, I think there's other aspects as well, as it's a major pipeline route. So the Saudi barrier was going to be bypassed. There was going to be alternative supplies either from the Iranians with Assad or from the Qataris. And these are the ones, the Qataris and the Saudis have been backing ISIS all the way, as we know from the Clinton WikiLeaks emails. The US have been backing a variety of proxies in the country to destabilise it for that purpose as well. So I think the energy side of it is a very key aspect to it, as well as the Israeli, Greater Israel, I suppose, plan for the region, just to add to what you said earlier. And in relation to the media, what I would say is that they're quite frankly no better than Nazi collaborators at the moment. They lie through their teeth. Day after day you will see lies that are blatant. Gas attacks chemical attacks by Assad, which are proven to have been done by the rebels. MIT professors have come out, the UN have come out. Day after day the Irish media will attribute that to Assad to justify American attacks. So we have a media that are lying blatantly to the public. What I do find though is sometimes in the Western media you will get some levels of truth coming out, but there's so much noise around it. And what they'll do is one day you'll have an article that will actually reveal something, the next day they'll carry on as if that truth was never revealed at all. So I've sent June a pack there where I've actually compiled information on Syria entirely based from the mainstream media, but attacking them. So when any time I go to post something, I'm using the Washington Post, Haaretz, Jerusalem Post, the London Times, the Independent Dakota UK, all of their papers to attack them, because otherwise if you use Global Research or any of these other sites, you're dismissed as a conspiracy theorist.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to come in. But before I ask the question, I worked in the Irish media and in newspaper, and I was working in a newspaper when the first Gulf War started.
When what?
I was working in a newspaper when the first Gulf War, W's father's war, and it was extraordinary to see the amount of agency material that was flooding in the week or so, 10 days before the war. So, agency copy, like from Reuters, Associated Press.
Not the CIA.
No, not up your age.
Indirectly.
Sorry, I didn't make the connection with it. But no, we refer to foreign news copy coming in from news agencies. But it was quite extraordinary and it was coordinated. We were flooded with material, really shock horror material. Saddam Hussein has chemical weapons that, 1 teaspoonful into a reservoir will destroy the whole town, all this kind of nonsense, which was flooding into the desks who were trying to make sense of what was going to happen or what was happening.
Right.
But there's a lot of lazy journalists. A lot of the Irish media, for instance, they don't have people on the ground, so they don't know what exactly is going on. So they take all this American, mainly American, sometimes British as well, London Times or AFP, French. They take all this stuff, they don't delouse it, they just run it straight through, and it's propaganda. You can see the build-up for a fortnight before the war actually began. It was sheer overload of propaganda. So much of it that it flooded the newsroom. So there are a combination of things here. There's self-censorship on the part of Irish journalists who will not criticize America. Because America is the big corporate entity that's putting Google and Facebook and European headquarters in Dublin and in Ireland, In Shannon, there's money involved in the transit of the troops, It's the greasy till syndrome. What W.B. Yeats talked about, Fumbling in the greasy till. It's about dollars. So it's a combination of all that. But my question to you is, what do you make of Hillary Clinton some time ago, before Obama did the deal with the Iranians, right, recently, about the nuclear program? Hillary Clinton is on the record